So, thank you very much. Very happy to be here. And thank you, Tom. You have been part of this endeavor at some point. Today, actually, I would like to shed some light on some of our new work at the Grand Egyptian Museum. I only started as General Director of this project about 7 months ago. And since then, we have tried now to create a new identity for the whole place, but with clear milestones in order to have this museum done with. Egypt has embarked on a huge project to build the museum of the 21st century. We have ample of space, about 490,000 square meters. It's a fantastic place, only 2 kilometers away from the pyramids. And as you can see up there, the museum itself was very well embedded in the whole surrounding and looks upon the pyramids from the north in a kind of way that you normally would not have looked at the pyramids. Normally, when you go to the pyramids now, you look to them from the west towards the east, but having this new angle from the north, seeing the three pyramids, this will be part of the treat of the Grand Egyptian Museum. Well, here you have the view that you will be seeing. This is how the whole thing looked when the project started in 2002. But actually, the building activities started only 2012. But we are now working at rather a good pace. We have finished about 75% of the concrete works, about 27% of the whole project, and everything now is going rather synchronic. So I hope that we can meet the deadlines that we have set for ourselves, and which I will be disclosing to you shortly. The area that will be built is about 168,000 square meters. The footprint is 65,000 square meters. This will put our museum worldwide at third place after only the Metropolitan and the British Museum in size. But we have to bear in mind that the Grand Egyptian Museum will be a museum that is only dealing with the ancient Egyptian civilization. The other two museums are not only dealing with one civilization. So actually this will be, at least for some time, the biggest museum in the world. We will have attached a conference building. We will have a retail area. So the whole thing is built up to be a real museum complex with all the means and opportunities to become, and this is something that I added when I came, I want the place to become also a meeting point for the society of the area around. And we are talking here about 4 to 5 million local citizens living around this area. So I think there must be an outreach towards these persons. The total artifacts 50,000 objects will be, inshallah, on display. Another 50,000 will be in accessible storage. Accessible storage means that if you have any knowledge of the object being at the Grand Egyptian Museum, you just come, we find out the number on the computer, and you immediately get the piece. It will take about 7 to 10 minutes to find the object. I think this is a great improvement towards the Egyptian Museum. I think we are also privileged compared to other museums that we will be able to offer within the 50,000 objects that we will be displaying 30,000 objects approximately that have never been on display before. So I think it would be worth coming by. We estimate to have about 5 million visitors a year. At the time before our revolution, the estimate was going from 5 to 8 million. I will now cautiously go towards the 5 million, but my ambition has no limits, so the 8 million are within reach. We are planning a partial opening in May 2018. Actually, this was never the approach for this museum. They were always talking about a complete opening of the museum. But in order to be able to set any kind of date, I said that I will not say anything about the complete opening. I will only agree to a partial opening. The partial opening is not bad. We're talking about 5,000 objects. And these 5,000 objects include the complete Tutankhamun. What does the complete Tutankhamun mean? You have seen until now at the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir always between 1,500 and 1,700 objects from the tomb of Tutankhamun. I will be presenting you 4,500. And then to the grand staircase. The grand staircase will be the monumental way leading you up to Tutankhamun. So, looking at the ideas that were there before, several ideas. At the beginning, there was the idea of having all the masterpieces from the Egyptian Museum, one behind the other, on this staircase. Of course, the masterpieces have some attraction, but this would not be something new. And now we have taken the bold decision to keep the Egyptian Museum at Tahrir as a museum of ancient Egyptian sculpture and relief. So these masterpieces that in the collective memory of the people of the whole world have been connected to this nostalgic museum will remain there. And then there was the idea of having kings of ancient Egypt standing on the staircase, welcoming the guests of Egypt. But actually, as this staircase is 28 meters high and goes up towards a 28 meters high glass facade overlooking the pyramids, and by this including the pyramids as a star object of the museum, I thought that it needs to be more than just kings standing behind each other. So, what have we now planned and even immediately gotten approved? So for you not to get any ideas to change it. What's going on here? This is going much too fast. Okay, again. This beautiful date that I said, 2018, May 2018, is provided that continuous funding of the project is secured. We are short now of about $800 million. But the situation is not desperate. So there are several things that might be in the media soon, which will provide a lot of hope for the project. The other thing is that the construction works must be finished by January 2018, as is the estimate right now. 2018, that means that I could start entering the galleries at the middle of 2017, which means that there would be actually enough time to do the whole exhibition. And after our colleagues in Torino have shown us that this is possible within 3 months, everything is possible. Administrative hurdles, I'm dealing with this now. What you see in front of me, this is one of the greatest hurdles for me personally. This will be the icon of the whole thing, the fantastic Saprinsky wall. And the problem is that it's so damn expensive. So I hope once it's finished that it was really worth it. One of the greatest challenges that I faced at the beginning was that this museum, as strange as it might appear, did never have a clear identity. And it was crucial for us now to have for each of the big museums in Egypt, the Egyptian Museum at Tahrir, the Grand Egyptian Museum, and the NEMEC, the National Egyptian Museum of Civilization, clear identities. And I was in the awkward situation that I have objects and now I have to accommodate them to an identity. And the greatest challenge was the collection of Tutankhamun. So at the end, I now have the identity, kingship, and eternity. Kingship is not a glorification of kingship, but the way the ancient Egyptians conceived their king. And if you look at it, kingship is the thing that remained rather constant in ancient Egypt for about 5,000 years, because the ancient Egyptians believed that the king has to play his role in the order, in the ma'at, in lifetime, and then be the mediator for the deceased for the second life after death. So in this aspect, we have to see the achievements that were made for the kings, and in sometimes, or in many cases, commissioned by the kings. Zone 1, this will be the grand staircase, demonstrating ultimate power with large statues and objects related to kingship. And here we are really showing large objects that should really be impressive. Then we have the royal case study. This is the Tutankhamun collection, which will be displayed in an area of about 7,000 square meters, giving it ample of space. And then zones 3, 4, and 5, the king, or kings and their subjects, And here, I looked around at the Egyptian museums and thought, there's one thing that is really missing, which is to show Egyptians and our foreign guests ancient Egyptian history through the objects in a chronological order that you can easily follow. So in the zones 3, 4, and 5, you will be following the relation between kings and their subjects from prehistory until the Greco-Roman period in a chronological order. The part in yellow, in strong yellow in the middle, this will be the grand staircase, which will take you from the atrium, the white part there, to the Tutankhamun galleries, which are in green. You see Tutankhamun will at last get enough space. He didn't even have it in his own tomb. And the part in pale yellow, these are the zones 3, 4, and 5, also giving you enough space to follow ancient Egyptian history in a space as big as about 3 soccer fields. And this is how the whole thing is supposed to look. You will be going up the grand staircase towards the 28-meter high glass facade overlooking the pyramids. These are the zones 3, 4, and 5, and Tutankhamun on that side. So, about the ultimate power. You see here now that we have divided the grand staircase. Pale blue, this is an area which we call the Digital Information Hub. There you will have information about the whole museum, how to get around in it, and how to use all the possibilities in information and so on, and everything that we provide at the museum. The part immediately beside it, this one is a timeline and ancient or royal records. For instance, including the royal title list from Saqqara. So there, in this part, you have these royal records, and that line on the wall beside the grand staircase, you will have a chronology of Egypt going up, so that you can really there also see what or how ancient Egyptian history emerged chronologically, including objects from our own exhibition, that you know which object is from which period. And then we'll start the brownish part at the beginning there. This is the royal image. So the statues, which were supposed to be in the whole place, will now be only in the front there. So you will be, at the beginning, welcomed by the statues of the kings of Egypt in a chronological order, in order to be able to see how the regalia and how the image of the king evolved through ancient Egyptian history, starting from the first and second dynasty until the Greco-Roman period. Then you have in yellow divine houses. There we will have objects from temples, from different temples from Egypt, but put in a way that it is as if it is a ruin of a temple. So you can see there, starting with sphinxes and with obelisks, going through some pillars and columns. So you go through a temple, showing what kings built for gods and the relation between the gods and the kings, and by that going over to the third part, which will show kings and gods. And one of the most important points that has been addressed several times in this meeting, or in several lectures in this meeting, which is that the gods were given the facial features of the king of the time. So here you have the connection between kings and gods. And then you come to the green part, to the blue part, which is going towards the pyramids. We call it eternal protection, but actually it's the quest for eternity. And there, how the ancient Egyptians chose to give a protection to the royal mummy and to prepare the deceased to reach eternity. And by this, making the connection to the pyramids, which are at the end a tomb, the quest for eternity. And I will take away from the Egyptian Museum the little remains of the Sphinx that are there, including the cobra, the Ureus, and we will have a picture of the Sphinx with these things in place there beside the pyramids, so that you are going towards Giza, and you have a kind of connection between both. When you have finished this grand staircase, up there it was supposed to be the little statue of Khufu, which was a great idea, of course, the statue in front of its pyramid. The only problem was the statue, as you know, is 7.5 centimeters big in front of a 28-meter high glass facade. I don't think that this would have been very good. So it will remain at Tahrir, and people will have the chance to take their photographs in front of this magnificent view of the pyramids. This is, I think I'll finish with this one. This is just to give you a taste of what objects will be displayed on the grand staircase. So starting with the monumental head of Usakaf, for instance, Queen Hatshepsut, Ramses II, the magnificent triade, which until now was at the garden in Tahrir. We will release it from all the pollution and take it into the Grand Egyptian Museum. Amenophes III, with Horus, the relation to the gods. Here the part of the divine houses, having also this fantastic top of the obelisk taken there. In the fourth part, the eternal protection, there one of the objects that we will be showing will be the sarcophagus of Akhenaten, but I will be moving him, or will be moving the sarcophagus shortly to the Grand Egyptian Museum labs, where I will smash it again in order to have the whole thing redone anew, because there are a few pieces that were not taken into consideration when it was done before, and I think we have now the means to do it in a better way. So I hope that I can welcome you all latest to the partial opening 2018. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tarek. Before we break for lunch,